Welcome to Smith Weekly Discussions, an occasional program for our members of Smith Weekly Research. Please note this program is a private discussion and everything contained herein is for entertainment and educational purposes only. With that, we hope you're in a comfortable position, along with your favorite beverage, to enjoy the discussion. We remind our audience to examine our show notes attached to each of our shows to better understand how our program functions. Before we get into our discussion, we want to say thanks for questions coming from our audience of Smith Weekly, including Jackie A., Ryan S., Mike P., and Nick W. We have a new guest of a returning company with us today. Mr. Stuart McDonald is on the program. Stuart is the president and now CEO of Taseko Mines, a mid-tier copper producer with the core Gibraltar mine in British Columbia and a set of notable growth pipeline projects, including the near-term Florence ISR copper project in Arizona, United States, as well as a strong pipeline of development projects at Yellowhead, Harmony, and New Prosperity in British Columbia. Taseko is a portfolio holding at Smith Weekly Research. The company is listed on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol TGB, on the Toronto Stock Exchange under the symbol TKO, and also on the London Stock Exchange under the symbol TKO. Mr. McDonald, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm well, thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me on your show. Happy to be here.
Well, Stuart, let's kick it off here. Why don't you give us your mile-high view of the copper market, and specifically, where do you think we are? Are we in early stages of this copper price uptrend, and we've got years to go? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's certainly been an interesting time. Where we were, I guess, 15 months ago on the bottom of the pandemic, copper price is close to $2. Since then, just a very strong recovery, and I guess in our view, that's been driven primarily by economic growth in China and demand for copper. And we think we think over the longer term that demand growth is going to continue. We'll expect that, some of the demand factors, the economic and the stimulus, infrastructure stimulus investments that are going to start happening in the US and Europe, following the path that China has taken. I think that's going to be bullish. And then in the longer term, of course, you've got the whole electrification story and the transition to renewable energy and electric vehicles, which is all very positive for demand over the longer term. So we look at copper out, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and we think it's a very strong outlook. We think copper is gonna is a commodity of the future, and we're bullish. So that's the demand side too, and the supply side we can talk about as well, but there's some real challenges there.
One of the things that part of this now is you have the copper price where it stands today, and with you looking at the global constraints on the supply side as far as projects not getting permitted or extremely delayed, just the lead time to get there. Is your thought that we are at an incentive price that would bring on a lot more projects in the years to come, or do you think that because of the cyclical nature of this business that the copper price, like last time, can go up substantially from here and even hang there for a time before the supply catches up? What's your thoughts just on that set of topics?
A lot of the analysts are talking about, or have been talking about, 3 or 3.25 long-term copper. I don't personally think that's a high enough price to incentivize enough mines to be built to meet the growing demand. I think that the true incentive price has got to be much higher than that. We've been over $4 here for the last few months, but a blip above $4 does not incentivize companies to change their capital plans dramatically. I think that people have to have conviction that copper is going to be above $4 for a period of time, and then then maybe you see some of these investments getting financed, because remember, you got to, as a mining company, our view is important, but we've got to convince banks and shareholders and other financing parties that copper prices are going to be over $4 for a long period of time. So it's challenging. I think it's going to take some time before the market gets to that realization, and in the meantime, we just don't see a lot of new projects getting built.
Agreed. I think there's a good amount of time there yet to come with a lot of these, and you're absolutely right. You can't have just a quick spike in prices and get anybody motivated to actually make some decisions. And I think we've got some time yet to go here, certainly. And I think if this were a baseball game, I think that we're not even mid-innings yet. So early stage in my view. Well, I'll tell you what, your first time on the program, and of course, Russ joined us back in, it was October 2019 for a really good chat. But how about you lay out your resume to our audience and your expertise on this business?
Sure. I guess my background, I'm trained as an accountant, but joined the mining industry on the finance side about 17 years ago. Been with two or three companies before joining Taseko. Most of my time was spent with a company called Quadra Mining, which I joined in about 2007 at the beginning of, or I guess in the midst of the first real copper cycle that we've experienced in the last 20 years. And yeah, had a good experience there. We went through a period at Quadra between about 2007 and 2011 of a rapid growth. The company had an M&A strategy, and ultimately, I guess, went through a merger and then was sold. Then had a brief stint at a company called Yukon Zinc, and then joined Taseko as CFO in 2013. And so I've been with Taseko now for 8 years. Was CFO until about 2019, and then became president and been president for the last 2 years. So, I think we've had a great experience here over the last 8 or 9 years, and it's been good to be a part of the team that has really put some of our growth assets that we now have into place. Right, we acquired Florence in 2014 and have moved that project forward. We acquired Yellowhead in 2019, and it's been exciting to see it come together, and it's a great opportunity for me as CEO now to take it forward and see what we can do.
Well, recent news, you're adding the role of CEO. Russ is moving to a board position only at the company. And of course, I'm pleased to see him stay involved. Such a fantastic guy and sound operator and veteran of this business. Talk about the transition and how important has Russ been to the success of this company and the importance of, him still staying here for that next phase of growth?
He's been instrumental. He's put this management team together. I think if you go back to 2005 or so when Russ joined, we had a very small management team at that time. Gibraltar had just been restarted. And so Russ really brought with him, the key members of our operating team. He, recruited our executive team essentially himself and has put it all together. And I think his vision is, what we've done at Gibraltar is really, a testament to his vision. And then also at the same time assembling a pipeline of projects that we have. It's, he's been a big part of that. So it's great. It's been a great partnership, I think, for me to work with Russ over the last 7 or 8 years. And I've learned a lot from him. I'm a different person than Russ for sure, but I think we've complemented each other very well over the years, and happy to be in a position to take it forward. Russ is going to stay on the board and very much involved in the company going forward. So it's been I would say a fairly orderly transition here, and a great opportunity for me, and I think it's worked out well.
Yeah, excited to see this go forward and all the pieces fall in place there. And it takes a lot of different personalities to make this all work, as you know. Well, let's get into the capital structure here. How about you just give us an update, Stuart, on the shares out at this point, a view on the cash on hand, and then also the debt situation here.
Yeah, on the balance sheet side right now, with that bond refinancing that we did in January, we upsized the bond from 250 to 400. And really the rationale for that was to bring some additional cash onto the balance sheet to fund the Florence build. So I think at the end of the first quarter, we ended with about 200 million of cash on the balance sheet and roughly 400 million US of debt. And we move forward from here. We've got, at these levels, we've got most of the cash we need to build Florence. So we feel that that's, in a strong position in terms of, it's possible we may not need any incremental financing to build out Florence. Over the longer term, when we get Florence up and running, we're going to be a different company. We're going to be generating a lot more EBITDA, and we'll have options in terms of the future, potentially reducing debt or who knows, potentially bringing in a dividend at some point down the road. But, pretty excited about the transformation that's going to happen here with the second operation coming on. Yeah, the shares, 600 million US market cap, just over $2 US a share. We're close to 280 million shares outstanding. obviously the shares had a good run, very good run over the last years. We're coming out of the pandemic, and I think the leverage that the company has to the copper price is really evident. You see us moving up and down with the metal price, but I think maybe the piece that's overlooked in the share is really the developments of Florence. We don't feel that we're getting full value for that project yet in our equity, so that is something that we work on, and we believe this is still to come as further upside in our shares.
That sounds good, Stuart. And I want to cover a little bit more here on Florence in a moment, but let's go to Gibraltar here and just get a basic operations update from you. I understand lower grade material has been consumed for the first half of this year, but high grade material is coming due to some transitions out there on site. During the second half, you guys will have better numbers, I suspect, coming out. But can you just talk about general operations update and then talk about your expectations to finish out the year?
Yeah, I think what we've seen at Gibraltar over the last two quarters, I guess Q4 last year and Q1 this year, was cycling through some lower grade sections of the pit, and we're at the beginning of Q4 last year, we finished mining in the granite pit, where we'd been essentially for almost 10 years of mining. So we finished there, and we began to mine and began to get ore release out of the Pollyanna pit. And typically what we see in our ore body is lower grade ore that comes out of the higher benches of the deposit. But as we work down deeper into the pits, we get generally higher grades. We think 6 months there was lower grade, and you saw that in our results where production was a little bit lower than normal. Fully expecting that grade then that production will tick up in the second quarter, and that's what we're seeing now. And then particularly in the second half of this year, we'll see much higher grades and likely above average grades. So this is the normal cycle that we've seen in the past at Gibraltar. It causes people, that are new to our company a little bit of time to understand that, but we really emphasize that, you got to look at, when you're looking at Gibraltar, you got to look at 12-month periods. When you do that, I think you'll see we've been fairly consistent around that kind of 0.25% reserve grade. So yeah, and that's likely where we'll end up in that range. That's where we'll end up for 2021, the current year as well. So back half of the year, second half. So just to summarize, second quarter will be better than the first quarter. Second half will be a lot better than the first half. Yeah, with copper prices where they are, it's shaping up to be a great year.
We're very comfortable with Gibraltar and what you guys are doing there, and it's a steady operation, which is what we like to see. It's just cornerstone for the company, and you guys seem to keep adding runway to it as well, Stuart. And with that, can you maybe just talk about, just maybe remind the audience and some who probably don't know, can you talk about the current mine life and then also the potential on exploration to keep this asset really at good run rates for the next 15 years plus?
Yeah, I mean, as things stand today, we've got 17 years of reserves remaining, and we'll continue to see production fairly stable over those 17 years at around the 130 million annual production plus or minus. There's no major blips in that, so it'll continue to be pretty stable. There is very much, there's definitely exploration potential on the property. I would say, generally speaking, Taseko has not done extensive amounts of exploration or drilling on the project, and I think that's something that we're going to turn our attention to here. We've got a little bit of work, a little bit of geophysics happening on the property in the last couple of months, and we'll likely have some news coming up here with a drill program that will occur in the fall or the late summer. So, there's definitely potential. We think it's a big ore body. I think if you look back at the history of Gibraltar, we've always been successful in converting resources to reserves and keeping a long mine life. I think that'll continue.
Maybe just talk about the hedging program for a moment. You guys have strategically made some pretty good moves with the put program over the years, but with the copper price run recently, was there some talk amongst management about maybe this is overheated short term on the copper price? Was there any discussion about putting in some protection, Stuart, or did you guys see that you were comfortable with the price and that you're just going to keep exposure to the upside? What was kind of the thought process as you guys saw this copper price run?
Yeah, I mean, we've always focused on protecting the downside. That's a strategy that has served us well, going back to probably 2009 or 2010. We've done that consistently. We think that it's a good investment of shareholders' money to essentially buy insurance, and we've seen that put protection pay for itself many times over the years when you have a sudden sharp drop in the price. And so we do that, I would say, fairly consistently. And we try to balance the cost of the insurance versus, the amount of protection we're getting. Definitely a cost benefit analysis that we do. So that's what we've done, and that will continue. In terms of taking advantage of, spikes up, I think we want to be a little bit careful there. I think that most of our shareholders are buying Taseko shares because they want that exposure to the copper price upside. We have a lot of leverage, and that's why people buy our stock, or one of the reasons why people buy our stock. So we're not going to, lock in forward price and take that leverage away. I don't think that's the right thing to do. And but there's other ways that we've thought about, whether that be copper collars or things like that. And I think that's a strategy that we definitely think about. But we want to have a hedging strategy that allows shareholders to participate in the upside, and that's really the key thing.
Yeah, I agreed. And there's a lot of upside to come, at least in our view anyway. Maybe we're wrong, but we're certainly here for that leverage as well. And I want to come back and ask you about the peers in a little bit. And I like your comment on the exploration. I think there's a place to slide in some exploration work there to continue to show, how important Gibraltar is to the company. But let's talk about Florence for a moment. I'm going to make the assumption that the EPA permit will be in hand by the end of August, potentially here. With the current cash on hand, plus the surplus flows from Gibraltar, are you comfortable moving ahead in full on Florence without the need to sell a minority interest or really do anything on that front at this point?
Yeah, we are. We are. And that's, the benefit we've had from the copper price increase. At these levels over $4, we don't need a JV partner. We may still do a minority sale, but it'll only be at an attractive valuation if we can get that. And so, we're not going to be forced into a transaction that doesn't make sense. And yeah, that's the benefit of having a great cash flows coming from Gibraltar and a strong market. So yeah, it's a good position to be in. It's certainly the run we have in the copper price has changed the dynamics on some of those discussions we were having a year ago. So we're ready to go. And when we get that permit, we're going to be starting into construction, and yeah, it's looking very promising for us going forward here.
Two follow-up questions there, Stuart. With the existing partner at Gibraltar, how's that relationship? Is there an interest potentially, if the price is right, that some existing partners and groups you guys know well do come in on Florence? Is that a potential? And then also, can you just tie this in here, assuming that permit is in hand by the end of August, as I would expect? Just give us a quick timeline here to what you see as maybe the first production date, potentially.
In terms of potential partners, we have had a successful partnership at Gibraltar with a consortium of 3 Japanese companies, and that dates back to 2011, and that's been a successful model for us. I think there's a lot of interest out of those companies in getting access to the metal offtake, and we've seen similar interest from that type of company at Florence. And so, without commenting on any names in particular, but that would be the type of partner that we would like to have, generally speaking, at our projects. So that's a model we like, and we can talk about Yellowhead as well later. But those are the type of partnerships that we think work well in the mining industry for companies like Taseko. And then in terms of the general timeline for the project, if we're starting construction here potentially in the fall, we do need that final EPA permit to do that. But once we get that, we expect to kick off here in the fall. It's about an 18-month construction period, and we can be producing first copper here in early 2023, first half of 2023. So that's the first year at Florence will be a ramp up year. I think according to following our feasibility study, we expect to produce around 50 million pounds that year. for the first 12 months. And then by the end of that period, we're essentially running at capacity rates. 85 million pounds will be the profile going forward for a 20-year mine life or 21-year mine life. So as I said, it's going to be a big change for our company, and we're really looking forward to it.
I am too. I'm excited to see this get in there, and I'm sure the folks in the local community are going to be excited to see this come to light here. It's a game changer for the company, and it's a game changer for the pipeline, which brings me into my next comments here. You know, it's pretty clear in the market that Taseko gets some credit for Gibraltar. Now, I think Russ would say maybe that not enough credit's due there. A little bit of credit maybe for Florence, but zero expectation for pipeline, which is really beyond in terms of talking Yellowhead, New Prosperity, Harmony, and Alley. This also takes me back to your guys's. You guys do a comparison in regards to some peers and reserves. There hasn't been a lot of love in the market for that complete giving some credit to what the team has done. And that's, to me, you know, this Florence component, Stuart, really solidifies that, you know, this is something that people need to pay attention to. But what's your thoughts just on that discredit of the pipeline? And then also when it comes to looking at this mid-tier market, which we take a hard look at, there's not a lot of companies out there, and you guys, to me, is the absolute standout. So what are your thoughts?
We have a slide in our corporate presentation where we show our reserves, and you know, I think that's important. Copper reserves in the ground. We have nearly 15 billion pounds of copper in reserves across the 4 copper assets, and those are, you know, that's value in the ground that you know is going to be realized over time. And there's different ways of realizing that value, but it's going to happen on all of those assets. So that's what we work on every day is how to create value out of that portfolio. It's a long-term strategy. I think it takes time and takes a bit of patience. Over time, we're hopeful that value is going to be recognized by the market. And I think you're right. We don't get value right now for. We get some value for Gibraltar. I think that's reasonably understood by the market, but certainly for Florence, you know, we don't get full value for it. And Yellowhead and New Prosperity and Alley are really zeros. It's frustrating in a way that we don't, because we compare ourselves to some of these smaller single asset companies that have large market caps with a development project in them. And I think, you know, if you did a sum of the parts analysis on our portfolio, you would come up with a big number. But for whatever reason, the market doesn't seem to recognize that. But hey, we're not discouraged. We think we're on the right track with a long-term strategy here to create value. And that pipeline approach is really fundamental. Has been fundamental to the company. I mean, if you look back, you know, we've had a strategy of bringing in projects at a low cost and moving them through the pipeline of engineering studies, permitting, construction. And if you go back 20 years or 21 years ago, we acquired Gibraltar for $1. And we restarted that asset. We reinvested and built it up into a world-class operation. Then at Florence in 2014, we acquired that one for about $60 million, and it's now, you know, 7 years later on the cusp of becoming our second operation. And you know, we think Yellowhead, we acquired that one in 2019. That's potentially coming next behind Florence. So it's a pipeline strategy. It's a long-term business in our view, and that's the way we approach it.
It's a nice pipeline, and some of the assets independently are company makers on their own. I mean, New Prosperity, I mean, as these copper, you know, bigger copper companies and gold companies cash flow and start to stack up their balance sheet, Stuart, I mean, there's some assets there that are notable. Some of these assets are tier one in current measures by even Mark Bristow's criteria.
Right.
So it's interesting on that front. And then you look out the Freeports of the world and you see what they've had challenges with Grasberg in Indonesia, and looking to make some various moves there as the copper price increases here. They've got to be looking to, you know, obviously shoring up their balance sheet now with cash flows, and then also looking to, you know, advance their projects. One of those being a key project in Arizona as well.
I think one of the important points about our pipeline as well is the location of where the assets are. You know, Canada, the US is where we've primarily focused. And we stayed away from a lot of those problem areas around the world where the copper mines, where there are lots of copper projects. Whether it's Central Africa, Indonesia, Mongolia, Zambia, all these jurisdictions have had real challenges, right? And over the years, and even now in Chile and Peru, we're seeing a lot of increased political risk, and that's where a lot of the big mines are that are needed to close the supply gap as well. So, we think over time the value of our pipeline located in BC and Arizona is going to become increasingly apparent, and yeah, so we're happy with our profile from a jurisdictional point of view for sure.
Yes, I'll give some credit to Robert Friedland and Ivanhoe at the DRC. They've done a good job with, keeping on the right side of the government and so forth, and community, and doing things pretty well there. But you're absolutely right. The jurisdiction is a key consideration as we see these events take
Mhm.
place in these various jurisdictions. Let's talk Yellowhead for a sec. Assuming Florence and Gibraltar remain strong, which I assume that they will, and the copper price cooperates in a way, Yellowhead slots in really well down the road with expectation that this CapEx, yet to be optimized, of course, but this CapEx could be handled in part from future cash flows given the time frame on Yellowhead, plus with Florence coming in here. Can you just talk briefly about just a high level schedule as you see Yellowhead advance here? And maybe you can just include a permitting time frame. I mean, I know Yellowhead's a 5-year plus project from here, but what's your thoughts on timeline, and really if things go that this is going to work out pretty well from a cash flow standpoint, most likely?
No, absolutely. We think Yellowhead slots in very well in kind of a sequential development after Florence. So the schedule on that project, we believe it's about a 2 or 3 year process to permit that mine here in BC. We're doing some of the early stages of that work right now. We're really focused on community relations and building up our relationship with the local First Nations. We think that's a key aspect right now to get through a permitting process effectively. So if we can do that, then the project is suddenly it's shovel ready, in 2023 or maybe early 2024, and that's right around the time where Florence is really starting to churn out good cash flows for us. So yeah, it sets up very well. As you noted, it'll be a larger capex build. I think it's about a $1 billion US capex based on our last technical study. But with when we have the two operations running, Florence and Gibraltar, we're going to be generating several $100 million a year of EBITDA. And suddenly, a $1 billion project, particularly if we follow the model with potentially another JV partner, or maybe we sell a 25% interest to an offtaker. Maybe it's a Japanese trading company again. But suddenly, with that type of structure, it becomes a very manageable project for us to build. And it would be another step change in our production profile. So with Gibraltar and Florence, we'll be producing about 185 million pounds of copper from those two operations. And Yellowhead would double that again. So Yellowhead's production is around 180 to 200 million pounds a year of copper in those initial years. So it represents a further step change in our growth profile, and it could be online in 2025, right at the time again where we think that copper prices are going to be very strong. So it's exciting. It's an exciting profile, we believe. We think it's a prudent strategy that we have to develop these projects in sequentially like this. And we're optimistic about the copper markets. That'll drive a lot of our decisions, but I think it shapes up well. Compelling story, and I think if you look at our company out with in 5 years with potentially 350 to 380 million pounds of annual production, we'd be one of the largest copper producers in North America.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the majors look down at this in the years to come, and also what happens if there is to be some good M&A that happens as price goes up here and everybody's balance sheet starts to look a lot healthier. Let's move on here just a little bit and talk, I guess, a little bit broader schedule here. Florence goes well here as planned, steady state at Florence, and you guys are putting together some good cash flows there. Is the plan also not only to advance in parallel with Yellowhead, but potentially look at the same period as trying to advance New Prosperity from here? Where does that potentially slot in?
New Prosperity is obviously a unique situation. It's had some. First off, it's a fantastic deposit. It's a copper gold porphyry. It's one of the largest undeveloped copper gold deposits in the world. So it's a great asset, but it's had its challenges in terms of permitting, and the big issue there has been opposition by a local First Nations group. We're working on that now. We're in a facilitated dialogue with the provincial government and the Chilcotin national government, trying to find a path through that. But I would say it's an uncertain timeline. It's not something you can put a schedule on per se. It's going to involve coming to some type of arrangement with the province and the First Nations about that. So again, it's one that we spend a lot of time working on, and I think it represents an option for us, but it's hard to say exactly when that's going to come to fruition.
Stuart, what's your thoughts as far as what do you see as how this goes forward? If you can maybe just share a little bit more, how does the local community and Taseko come together on the common ground to see this advance to the benefit really of the local community, the economy there, and the opportunities at the local level? The provincial government, obviously, this is a big deal, and also meaningful growth for Taseko. What do you think? Any further thought there? Do you guys think that everybody can get on board and really see the benefits across the board to move this ahead?
Look, in terms of the broader community in the Cariboo, there's great support for the project, but there's a small group of an Indigenous population there, the Chilcotin. The project is located within their traditional territory, and it's a sensitive issue for them. And they wield a lot of power in the region and with the provincial government as to whether the project should go forward or not. So that's the tricky issue that we're trying to navigate. Yeah, it's a fantastic economic opportunity for the region, for the province, and for the local communities surrounding that property. But we'll see. It's not always easy to convince people of the merits of a mining project. It's a challenge we see around the world, and it takes time and it takes a little bit of patience. So, but that's what we're working on.
You guys are not strangers to challenging projects. Gibraltar and what you and Russ and the team has been able to do there with local community and your guys' initiatives to keep local community engaged to the fullest extent, not only for direct jobs and direct impacts, but also incidental, businesses and so forth that support that operation. And then you guys have also had challenges with, getting Florence and everybody there to understand that this is a very, very net positive, good project, especially with your guys' ISR route here, which is, in my view, quite a game changer. It's a tougher technology, but you guys appear to be smoothing out that very well. And so here we go again with Yellowhead too. And so I think you guys have certainly the expertise in house here to see this go forward and find a common ground. I think at the end of the day, this is a net positive for everybody. But I appreciate the comments on that. And any comments on Harmony or Alley at this point, Stuart?
No, they're both projects that are, they're identified deposits. I would say they're not exploration stage deposits, they're development stage. But I would say probably non-core for Taseko at the current time. We've got our hands full, we think, with Florence and Yellowhead, but we'll look for ways, to create value from those assets as well. And again, those are opportunities that we work on. There's different ways to create value for shareholders rather than building a mine. So we'll see what we can do in the coming years.
Thanks for talking about those, because those are also something that have zero value. And, Alley, for example, is interesting in itself, and there's good potential there, and they're not small projects either. So
no, yeah, and the Alley, the niobium market is obviously, it's a little bit outside of our focus on copper. It's a niche market, but it's a pretty exciting metal. It's really something that we think is going to grow in value in the coming years. It's used niobium primarily used in lightweighting of steel, and there's also use that it's beginning to be used in batteries as well as a replacement for lithium. And we've seen some pretty exciting announcements out of Toshiba in Japan on that front. So these are, again, it's a reserve, it's in the ground, and we think over time, the value of these assets is going to be realized and may grow in the coming years. So it's not to be ignored for sure.
I want to tie in the mergers and acquisitions in the copper, mid-tier segment here with your guys' pipeline. What are your thoughts on M&A at this stage? And are you comfortable not needing to do M&A yourself, given the pipeline? Obviously, it's pretty substantial here. But, let me tie that in with core and non-core assets here. Do you see that there is any interest in selling off or partnering, monetizing any of these pipeline projects, or is it Taseko's goal to remain with the majority interest in all of them? And obviously, from the view of you guys, there's probably no need for M&A yourselves, but maybe you have a view on bigger M&A as far as the majors looking towards the mid-tier space, or even consolidation of mid-tiers.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen a lot of M&A activity generally in the copper sector yet. I think that the majors, diversifieds, talk about developing copper as a priority, but we haven't seen them get aggressive yet on acquisitions. But I think as you see sustained copper prices over $4 for a period of time, that may change. I'm not sure. In terms of consolidation or bigger companies coming after Taseko, certainly that's something that we're not going to initiate ourselves. We believe that the best way for us right now to create value is to keep moving our pipeline forward, get Florence built, operating, and generating cash flow. We think that in itself is going to be a huge catalyst for our share price. So we certainly don't think this is the time for Taseko to be entertaining any type of M&A activity using our currency, using our share currency. That's our approach there. And as you noted, on the acquisition side of it, we have a full pipeline. We don't really need to be doing acquisitions to build out our company because we've got all the assets we need in house. So. But we keep our eye out. I mean, there's a few. We keep our eye out at some earlier stage opportunities in our jurisdictions, but it's not really a key focus for us. On the disposition, in terms of our existing portfolio and if there's other ways of creating value from our non-core assets, certainly that's something that we look at, and we're open to different ways of creating value. We don't have to own and operate all of our projects and build them all ourselves to create value. So again, as I said, there's different ways of doing that. And if it's a disposition or a JV, or if someone wants to partner with us on assets, we're always open to those kind of discussions. But it's got to make sense for a share price.
I agree with the strategy, Stuart. I think you guys have fundamentally got that view correct, and it certainly aligns with what I think as well. Not that my opinion matters much here. Okay, environmental social governance. This is a trendy topic, and I'm sure Russ would have a constructive view on ESG. But what's your view on ESG, Stuart? And really, this is a set of principles that Taseko has carried through company history. And maybe you can just give your flavor for ESG and what it means to the company today.
I think we've always taken these issues very seriously. I think that if you look at the way we have operated Gibraltar, our focus on environmental protection, if you look at our track record in terms of employee safety and compliance, it's a very strong record. I think what is perhaps changed a little bit in the last couple of years is we're trying to we're putting more effort into telling that story at Gibraltar. And I guess the other aspect to it is the contribution that we make to the surrounding communities. And employment is one aspect, but there's a big contribution that we make in that region from our mine, and we'll do the same thing at Florence. So it's really the way we think about ESG reporting is really telling that story properly, because we think that we've got a great story to tell. We're doing things the right way. Getting the message out. Well, so we started, I think, in 2020, May 2020, we published our first sustainability report, and then we followed that up in April with the second annual one. So it's a very interesting and informative report. It's on our website. I encourage people to take a look at it, because it's a lot of things that go on that maybe aren't top of mind for shareholders, but are very important for the communities that we operate in. So I would say our approach has been to tell our story and do it our way. We have not yet latched on to a particular framework. I know there's all kinds of different guidance out there and different groups trying to jockey to be an industry standard. We have not joined up with anyone in particular yet, but we're focused on telling our story our way, and we believe we've got as I said, a great story to tell.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of companies out there that wave these reports in their hands, but they're not really doing anything. I think you guys are showing that on the ground. That's the difference. And any specific initiatives that you want to bring up, maybe at Florence, maybe at Gibraltar, that you just want to mention on maybe the community side, which is the side that I really have preference for, I think is important. But any particular initiatives you want to point out, maybe at the First Nation level, community efforts?
We focus on a diverse workforce, I think, at the mines. We want our workforce to be representative of the communities where we operate. So whether that's ensuring we are attracting women to work at the mine or Indigenous people, we want to show that we are open and giving people all the opportunities to participate in what we do. So that's a big focus at the mine. I think the other thing that maybe people don't realize about our operations is we're also very low in terms of GHG emissions. So at Gibraltar, in terms of carbon emissions per ton of copper, that mine is a first quartile global copper mine, and we had an independent review done by Skarn Associates to verify that. So we're low on the emissions, and then of course with Florence coming on, Florence with the efficiency and the minimal environmental impact there, Florence will be one of the lowest GHG emission copper mines in the world, and so that will drive us even higher in the rankings on a consolidated basis. So that's something that maybe people don't realize about Taseko, that we are very efficient in that way. And yeah, it's a good story to tell. We see it being an increasing focus with some of the major miners making announcements. Well, we're already a long way there.
Right. Stuart, on Florence, will some of the efforts, obviously there be certainly employment is my suspicion there for that region. Employment would be one item, and then also maybe some educational scholarship programs. And then will there be any transfer between the mines as far as expertise coming down and wisdom transfer from ISR to conventional? Any of that stuff happening?
We've got, they're very different, obviously very different types of operations. Gibraltar being a large throughput open pit mine, and then Florence is an in situ, smaller scale operation in terms of footprint. But there are principles, I guess, or operational standards that we're bringing from Gibraltar down to Florence in terms of a focus on safety and training programs, some initiatives on the HR side that we're hopeful to get set up at Florence as well. So there's definitely call it operational expertise that we can bring to Florence, and that's what we're in the process of doing now as we prepare for the operational phase, commercial operations of Florence.
Arizona is just a good jurisdiction for copper anyway here.
Yeah, it's right in the belt. Really of Florence, we're right in the copper belt there. We've got, it's a historical mining area. There are copper mines in the area, of course. There's a smelter not far away. There's a great pool of talent down there in terms of, and of course, all the suppliers and contractors. So you don't need a lot of things imported per se. It's all right there in the region.
Well, for potential investors who are on the sidelines listening here, Stuart, market cap of the company stands about 600 million US dollars. What would you say to them at this stage and at current price levels?
There's lots of room for upside here, and I think it's going to be driven by the developments at our Florence project. As I've said here, it's we really don't believe we're getting value for that. Florence is a $700 million US dollar after tax NPV, and that's at $3 copper, or $3.10 copper, I believe. So there's lots of value to be created there. We think we've de-risked that project. Technically, permitting is coming soon. That'll be a catalyst, of course. Yeah, we think there's lots of upside for shareholders in the coming year. And then, of course, at Gibraltar, we continue to have great leverage to the copper price there. We're taking advantage of these high copper prices, and we see growing production in the second quarter and then again in the second half of the year. So we haven't, because production was a little lower in the first quarter, we haven't shown the market yet, what Gibraltar can really do in a $4 copper price environment. So we will be doing that in the next few quarters.
For potential surprises here, permit in hand would be one item, and then of course construction commencement and everything staying on time, copper price, and then any positive developments coming out of New Prosperity or any of the other pipeline assets, I think is completely unexpected here and certainly not priced in. Well, how about best way for investors to reach out to the company?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out to our investor relations department, Brian Burgo, our VPIR. It's always a good contact. Phone us or contact us through the website, and yeah, always happy to talk to shareholders and potential new shareholders. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out.
Well, Stuart, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Keep up the progress at Taseko.
Very good. Thanks, Andrew. Enjoyed the conversation, and thanks again for having me on your show.